Hi, Blessing. Good evening. Sorry for that, Mr. Festus. Uh, when are we? Okay, going live very soon, right?
Yeah, we're live by God's grace, and once it's 7, we can start.
All right, sir. Let us just give people a few time to join in. I can see right now. I think I'm seeing one person on the live chat or one person on the attendance for the live call. Um, few time to join in. I can see right now. I think I'm seeing one person on the live chat, one person on the attendance for live call. Few time to join in.
Yeah, good evening once again, sir. Good evening, everyone. We thank God for how far He has brought us. And many are called, but few are chosen. Yeah, so we are not discouraged. We forge ahead. We thank God for as many of you who are participating keenly and putting your hand to work and your heart to also practice. I trust that God will continually strengthen your heart and increase in wisdom. So tonight, I believe as God is helping us, we are moving on towards the end of the intro to front end web development. And I believe Bro Israel is ready for us this evening. So we can start now by God's grace. Over to you, sir.
All right then. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Festus. So let us go ahead and start with these lessons. Now we have two very important um topic to treat today. But and the first one is array methods. Second one is DOM operations. DOM operations. Now these two methods, not methods. So these two topics are these topics are very, very high level topics in HTML and JavaScript or in front-end development, right? They are some of the more important things we do when it comes to building a website. Right, we'll start with array methods. So back to our app.js. Back to our app.js. So let me just create a new, let me create a new file. Call it array.js. So I'll come here. Let me put this in bio. Um, so uh, not source. I'll call this array.js. Array.js. So let me increase my font size a bit. Let me first log into the console and increase my font size. Okay, so we have our size increased. Hopefully you can see this now clearly. Uh, clearly. Let's go and load this on our website and see what it looks like. All right, you can see it says array.js successfully. Now we can keep writing our code and we can trust that our JavaScript will run on the console for us. Uh, let me see. Hold on, I'm checking the live call. Okay. All right. So um let's start now. What are arrays? We've already discussed what arrays are previously. Arrays are a variable type that holds, or is a data type that holds a list of variables. Right. So let's say attendance, for example. Attendance is a list of names. right? It's an array like this, right? Put it in tag. So we can say Israel, Israel, right? And say blessing, say peace. So this is an array. It's a list of string, or in generally a list of variables. It could be strings, it could be objects, it could even be other arrays, it could be numbers, it could be booleans, right? There's no end to the type you can have inside of an array, right? So all of these are, sorry, all of these are, right? So we have here an array, and it's a list of variables, right? There are variables inside the array. It's like, instead of, we have, like we said, we have, let's say, a box and the name. So the name of the box reveals what is in the box. So each variable normally is a box, and what is inside is the value in that variable. So if I say const name equal to Israel, so name is a variable. It's a box. It's a space in your system, right? That is called name. And then in that space, what is saved is Israel. That is how variables work. But attendance, it's a box that houses other box, or that houses many values, not just one. So now name can only be saved to Israel. You understand? But attendance is a box that houses many variables. So there's the first item, which is at the index of 0, second one at the index of 1, third one at the index of 2, fourth one at the index of 3, and then fifth one at the index of 4. So if I come to my browser again, right, and I refresh the page, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I can see Israel at index 0, blessing at index 1, right? So I can even rewrite what is in a space. So I can say, um, okay, if since I'm using const, I can't change it, right? So if I say something like const attendance, or if I say, let's say I want to change Israel to bio, right? Like this, attendance 0. Jesus, let's see how it goes. And then let me consult the attendance. So it's not saying TVS. You can see it is now saying TVS. That's because I'm changing one of the value inside of the array. So it's no longer saying Israel because of this operation. So I can redefine what is at a at an index, right? I can redefine what is there. So instead of Israel here, I move. So I now say that, okay, whatever that first space in the array, I want it to be saved as TVS. So Israel is no longer there, it's now TVS. And that is what happens here. So this is something we can do. We can decide to reassign the value at a given index in an array. We have the option. But let's say this is the name of the person who came first, and then Israel came in after. Right? Israel came in after. We have a way of putting in a value at the end. So I'll delete all of the other things that are not named, like this and false. These are not names, so I will delete them. Let's say after this, Israel now came in. How do we now add Israel to the list? So there is a method called push in array, a method. So this method belongs to an array. It doesn't belong to strings. It doesn't belong to boolean. It doesn't belong to numbers. It doesn't even belong to objects. It belongs to arrays and arrays only. So we can add Israel to the end of the list. I'll do that by using a method called push. So I can say attendance dot push. And you can see I'm using dots, and it works because you can see how it suggested it for me. So when I type dots, you can see how there's push, there's map for each. We'll come to this later on. We'll treat some of these as we go on, right? But you can see how it is here, right? So dot push, sorry, dot push Israel, or I would say Tivers. So Tivers came in afterwards. So what I would do is I will log attendance in two places. CLG attendance, attendance. Okay. So we see two attendance. One of them should have Tivers inside. One should not have Tivers inside. I will refresh my page. And as you can see, the first one, the attendance was Israel blessing and peace, right? And then afterwards, we now added TVS because it came in later on. So we can use this push method to add something to the back, right? To the end of an array, to the end. You didn't put it from the start, you put it from the end. And that is how this array.push works, right? That is how array.push works. So I will just have my comment here saying array methods. Array methods. So first one is push. That's when you are going through my code later on, you understand how we arrive at each of these. Now, the second one is pop. Now, what does pop do? Pop removes the last element from the array. It removes the last element from the array, right? So now we have this same array. So make it longer. So we have this same array. I will comment out this implementation, or I'll rather copy it here. All right. So now we have all of this. Now let's say we want to remove the last, value. Right? We want to remove the last value. Now what pop does is that it removes it and it gives it to you. When we did push, it just took the entire array and added something on the back. But when we say attendance dot pop, right? Let's see what happens here. Let's see what happens here. So I'll go up and do it like this, okay? All right, so now what we're doing is that we are logging the attendance. Let us see the full list first, and then want to use dot pop to remove the one at the back. You can see how we are calling it. You can see how we call it like a function, right? So we have the name here, and then we have parentheses open and closing. Exactly how I said we call functions. But you see, this one, the function is attached to the variable, right? So let me show you what I mean. So if I say const name equal to Israel, right? If I type name dot, you won't see push here. Are you seeing it? You won't see push here, and that's because name is not an array and push belongs to arrays. So if I instead wrap name with this square bracket, is now an array. Right now is now an array of just one item, which is Israel. So now when I say name dot, sorry, okay, the value name has a keyword. So let me call it names. I say names dot, you see push, right? You can see how there's push there. So that is how it belongs to arrays particularly. Right, that is how it belongs to arrays particularly. So the method is an array method. You can see how there's no push here. Right, there's no push here. That because push is strictly for arrays. So let us see how this works now. I will head over to my code and refresh my page. So firstly, we had Israel, blessing, peace, and joy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And happiness. Where's the last one? Okay, Israel, blessing, peace, joy, happiness. We had all of them there. And then here we now have just Israel, blessing, peace, and joy. You can see happiness here. It's no longer there. It is no longer there. So let me refresh again. All right, so you can see can see it. You can see Israel blessing, peace, joy, happiness. And then on the second line, you can see only Israel blessing, peace, and joy. You understand? So this pop has removed one of it. Now, the thing about pop is that unlike push, pop actually gives you what was removed. So if I say const removed name, right? Remove name is equal to this, and then I log remove name, and then I log removed name. Let us see what comes off of this. You can see it gives me happiness because happiness was what we removed from the function. So this array, it gives you what was removed. So in case you actually need the last thing, not just what was removed, right? For example, if you arrange, let's say we did an evaluation, let's say we did an evaluation of test results, and then we arrange it in order of the lowest to highest. So the lowest comes first, and then at the end of it, you have the highest. So we can use array.pop to remove the item at the end to know who got the highest score. You understand? So that's one of the use cases of .pop. Right? There are many reasons why you might want to remove the last thing at the last what's it called? Why you might want to remove the last item? Right? Why you want to remove the item at the end of the array. You understand? So there are many reasons why, but just know that array.pop gives us that functionality. Now, we also have a method called onShift. OnShift, right? So I'll comment all of this out. So what does OnShift does? OnShift, it adds one more element to the beginning of the array. So dot push adds to the end, dot pop removes from the end, right? Whilst OnShift adds one more to the beginning. Add to the beginning. So if I say attendance dot OnShift, you can see how it gave me a solution here OnShift, right? Let's say the first one is Festus, right? And then let me also log attendance. Attendance. In fact, let me log it before I push Festus, before I unsheet Festus to the front. So what you see here is that the first array starts with Israel, but the second one starts with Festus. So Festus is not the first element. So everything else was pushed. Right. So we took Festus and put at the front, and then everything else aligned after that. Right. So it is the same array, Israel, blessing, peace, joy, happiness. But now we have Festus in front before Israel, blessing, peace, joy, happiness. So this is what we use onShift for, to add something to the front of it. Now, there are many reasons why you want to add something at the top, at the front, right? So let's look at, let's say your alerts, right? So if you really think about it, the more recent alert is always at the front. So when we take an alert, let's say we're reading your alert from first to last, first being the oldest one, right? So when a new one comes in, we put it at the front, not at the back. So if you go and see your alert now, the more recent ones are at the front, the older ones are at the back. So they are putting new alerts, new bank alerts, without credit or debit, they are putting it at the front. So they could very well be using this on-shift method to add the new alerts to your list of alerts. And they're always putting everything at the front of everything else, right? So once we have this alert, once you have a debit alert, that alert message is being added to the front of the list of alerts we already have, right, on you. So that is one of the use cases for onShift, right? We use it to add one more element to the beginning of the array. Now, as you can tell, we also have, as you can probably guess, we also have another method called shift. And what shift does is that shift, it removes the first element in the array and it returns it the way pop does. So I'll come here and I'll say shift, right? So I'll log attendance, right? So remove name. attendance done shift. We want to save it to remove name, and then let us log it. Right. So when we log it, we can now see that we can now see what name was removed from the first, from the start, right? So I'll come to my browser again and refresh. Let's see how all of this goes. So now Israel is no longer there. Matter of fact, I'm logging it twice. So why is not logging? Attendance, remove name, and then attendance order shift. Okay, I'm logging out, remove name. So I'm logging out, remove name. Right. So now you can see now we have 5 elements here, and then we removed Israel, and then we have 4. So instead of it starting with Israel before blessing, we don't have blessing here. So we've removed the element at the start of it, right? So this is how we add and remove elements from arrays. Now the next the next um the next method we'll look at is for each. We will not treat all the methods, but we'll do as many as we need to do for this call to give you a good idea of how to work with arrays. Right. So what does for each? For each works like for each is a method that runs with every element in an array. So it's like a loop. You know how we write a loop to loop from one number to another number. And let's say want to share, let's say we want to share rice, right? We have a list of names, we want to share rice, or we have a list of names, I want to greet each and every one of them. So we take the first name and say, welcome to, let me go back to the what's it called? To the okay, so we have our names here, Israel, blessing, peace, joy, and happiness. We want to greet each of them one after the other. Right? We want to greet each of them one after the other. What we'll do is we'll say, hello, Mr. Israel, welcome to church. Hello, blessing, welcome to church. Same thing for peace, joy, and happiness. Right now, we can either loop to an array 5 times and then use. I'll show you how to do this, right? So there are 2 ways. Before I show you how to write for each, let's see how we can loop this array and get all of them. Right. So now I'll use a for loop because I know how many times I have to loop. I have to write a loop that iterates the number of the length of the array. So if it is 5, we'll do 5 times. If it is 10 people on this list, will loop 10 times and get one of them each. So we have a number, and the number is simply the length of the array. So what I will do is I will say for so before I teach you for each, let me show you how to loop through an array, and then show you how for each is a better way of doing it. So I will say let I, if you remember the syntax from the last class for looping, let I equal to 0. So we'll start from 0. As long as I is less than attendance dot length. I'll show you why now. Dot length I plus plus. Right? So what are we doing now? We're saying that I will start from 0. And if you watch, the index starts from 0 as well. As you can see, 0. And then as long as I is so I this is the array condition, right? As long as I is less than the length. See, this dot length is a variable in every array that keeps track of the length of or the number of items in the array. So now in this array, how many items are there? We have 5 items in this array, right? You can see number here 5. Let me see. Let me just log the attendance on its own. So you can see we have you can see length, you can see the dot length, you can see length here. 5, right? We have 5 elements in this array. Now, as long as the loop tracking, right? So we'll start from 1. We'll start from I being 0. As long as I is less than length of the attendance dot length, keep adding 1 to I. That's what um that's what this is doing, right? So every time you come out to check if I is now is still less than attendance dot length. If I is no longer less than it, it will stop running this code. Now, I will stop being less than the attendance dot length when I is now 5. So I will be 0 first time, and then after it runs, it will now be 1, right? Because the first time 0 is less than 1, correct. Second time, 0 is less than 5, rather. As you can see, there are 5 elements here. 0 less than 5, and then it will run, and after running, it will now add 1 to I will not be 1. When I is 1, it is still less than, so it will run and make it 2, 3, 4. 4 is still less than attendance of length, and then it will run the last time, and once it add 1, it becomes 5. So when it comes back here to come and check, is 5 less than the length of attendance? The attendance length is 5, and 5 is not less than 5, so it will not run the last time. Now it has already run 5 times. It run when it was 0, when it was 1, 2, 3, and 4. That is 5 times, right? That's why it needs to be less than length, because if let's say we say as long as I is less than equal to or equal to the length, it will run 6 times. So it will run when it was 0, when it was 1, when it was 2, when it was 3, when it was 4, and when it was 5. Because although 5 is not less than the attendance length, it is equal to. And when we use this kind of comparison, less than or equal to, or means that if anyone walks here, then it should be true. And 5 is equal to 5, and that's true. So it will run again. So that is why we must stop it before it reaches the length of the array. So now, remember how I said we can log an array elements using the index, right? So we can also, now this I is a number. I can use this I to index the attendance. So if I say console.log attendance at I, the first time when I is 0, it will bring out the first value in the array, or the value at the index of 0, which is Israel. So after it runs that code, it will now what we do? It will add 1 to I is now 1 instead of 0. So when I is 1, the index is now best because it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what this should do, you should log out. What this should do is that you should log out all of the individual names in our array. And let us see if that is what we have on code. Let's us see if that's what we have on code. So I'll come back to the browser, clean this off, and refresh the page. As you can see, it picked them one after the other. So now we can easily, instead of just logging the name, you can put a comma and then say welcome to church today. And say welcome to church today. Okay. So when we go back, what have we done? We have now successfully greeted everybody. So we loop through them. The first time, remember, this is an iteration, right? It's like counting students in a class. Okay, I pick this one. After you, the next one, the next person, and next person like that. So what we are doing is that we are iterating through the array. So what we do is that we use a loop, right? The loop starts at 0, and the loop will keep going until it's now equal to the length. So it's not run when it's equal to length. It will run when it is one value beneath the length. And then after adding 1, it now becomes equal to the length. So it's no longer less than it. So we are saying that as long as this I value is less than attendance.length, run this code and then add 1 to the I. So the first time I is 0, this code will run because 0 is less than the length. So after running this code, we now do I++. So this I++ now adds 1. It now adds 1. I is now 1 because it was 0 before, it's now 1. So second time, they now check again, is 1 less than attendance.length? It is. Then we run this code again. Whilst we have I as a variable. Now this I is a number, and as you can see, we can use numbers to index an array. Right? We can use numbers to index an array. So if before that I come here and I say console.log attendance 4. What this does that it will print out the 5th value, because 4 is the 5th value because it starts from 0. Apologies. Let me check the link again. On my end, it's an error. Okay, we are still here. Right, so what it will print is it will print the value at the 5th position, because the first position is 0. So when I say 4, I'm getting the 5th value. right? Because I'm getting the value at the index position of 4, and index start from 0, so this will give me the fifth value. Now, this I is also a number, so we can use this number to grab each of the values in the array using these square brackets, right? All right, so this is how we run a loop. Now, a more this is a more what's it called? This is a more um crude way of doing it. So if it's an array, we can use array, we can use for each, right? I use for each. And what for each will help us do is you can say attendance dot for each. So what we'll take here, it will receive a function, and that function that will pass to it, it will receive a name, right? Now let us console.log name. Now, because attendance is a list of names, that's why we're using name here. We can use anything. We can say item. All right, we can use anything here. We can say item and it will still work. Right, it will still work. So let us see how this goes. So you can see this is from the for each method. So let's think again how this is working. So we are giving the for each a function. This is a function. You can see this is a function expression, right? Because it is not being defined into a variable name the way we write functions last week. Let me show you. You can see how we wrote where's the function? It's down, 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 down. You can see how we write this function here, the function and then a variable name. But this particular one, we didn't add the variable name because we're passing it to or passing directly to another method. So this for each is a function that expects a variable. That variable will be given to the function by the for each. You can see how nowhere here are we calling the function. We're not calling it, we're passing it to for each. So for each is what we now call this function and passing each of the items in the list one after the other. And that is how we ended up with Israel blessing, peace, joy, and happiness one after the other, as though we are looping through it. So this function is a loop. So this function behind the scene, it turns this loop and it takes the attendance at the position of the index and passes it to the function. So we can say item, or let's change the name back because it makes more sense for this example. So I will say name, all right, and then I can now put my comma and say, welcome to church today. So if I come to my console and I refresh, you can see that this one gave us the same results, and it is even more simple and more straightforward. All right, it is more straightforward than having to write a loop. You understand? I mean, it's debatable, but when you have a much more larger operation to do, you can easily let me show what you can do. You can say const say hello. Right? This is one of the can say hello. Let's make it let's write it like okay, no, let's say function say hello name, right, and then it says so what we can do is that instead of just passing this function, we can simply write say hello here. We can call say hello, sorry. So say hello, we can pass it here like so. Right, so let me see if this works. Right, you can see the variable, it expects a what's it called, a variable name, and simply passing this function, this for each will call the function with one of the items, right? And then we have what we need to log our console. So you can see how cleaner this code looks with a function. Right? Functions makes our code very, very clean. Some people are saying they can't see the screen. How about now? It's bigger now. Let me know if you can see it now. Remember, if you can't see the screen, you can simply increase of brightness one. If you've done that, then you can also try to what's it called? Try to increase the what's it called? Increase the sorry, what's that? We can try to increase the resolution of the video. Yes. So this is how we run for each, and then we also have um some other methods to look at, right? So let us log this one out. In fact, I'll copy this one first. I'll go back to the old implementation. So you can see, you can have two of them, right? So have these two implementation. Hold on, not this. I want the loop. I want to see the loop. Okay, and for each. Okay, that's just for each. Let's say hello. Okay, so okay, so this is for each. This is for each. Let me add some extra, so you know that this is the heading. Sorry, give me a couple minutes. No, just like 30 seconds. I'm coming. Okay, I'm back. Thanks. So we have shifts here. Now the next one we'll talk about is map. So what does map do? What does map do? Map creates a new array by applying a function to each element, right? It gives you a new array of transformed elements. Right, so let's say we have a list of names here. We have a list of names here, and we want to, let's say, instead of we want to um what can we do now with this list of names? Let me see. What can we do with the list of names? Let's say we want to add, want to signify their index, right? Want to signify their index. So, or want to signify uh, their number, or the number at which they came, right? So now we want an array instead of Israel, wants to be Israel dash one, and then blessing dash two, like this, right? So we want to transform the array. Let's say this array is not giving us enough information. So we can use map. Map transforms an array. It runs a function on each element, and then at the end of it, it returns a new array of transformed elements, right? So we can say um, const new attendance.map. So what are we doing with attendance.map? What are we doing here? So want to return. Oh, we can, okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's just return the greeting, right? So what we are doing here now is that this new array, instead of just the name, we're not getting the full greeting, or we can say new, or we can call this attendance greeting. Attendance greeting, right? So after this, let's log attendance greeting to the console. and see what it looks like. So you can see we now have an array, Israel, welcome to church today. So we now have the full greeting in an array, right? We can also say Israel was in church today, right? Something like this. Was in church today, right? So this is how we use map. We can also use filter. Let's say someone informed us. So this is how we run map. We'll see many use cases later on. This is how we run map. Let's say many we have what's it called? We have a let's say someone informed us that Israel actually came to run an errand. He was not actually in church. So we have to remove Israel from the what's it called? From the array. So we can say um, const new attendance. Uh, sorry, right? Want to return. Okay, so want to say if so want to check if the name, right? If it's not equal to Israel, want to return the name. So we'll pick the first name, we'll check, is this name not equal to Israel? If it is true that the name is not Israel, we'll return the name. But if it is Israel, nothing will happen. So it will not be returned, right? So now let us log the new attendance and see what we have. New attendance. All right. So you can see we have Israel here normally. In fact, I will log attendance at the top. So we can see it before we remove it. So we can see we have Israel here, blessing, peace, joy, happiness, sports. The second one, we don't have it because we have filter it out. That what the filter does. Filter, you can see all of these methods, filter, map for each, they all follow the same pattern. They receive a function, and that function we should be expecting a parameter, and we can do what we want with the parameter. So if we want to just run a function on every item, we use dots for we use for each. We use for each. If we want to change the entire array one after the other, one item after the other, we use map because map will give you a new array, right? And then attendance, filter also gives you a new array after performing an experiment on the items as well. So filter will give you the new array. So now with this filter, you can choose to remove one of them inside, right? You can choose to remove one of them inside. So most time filter always have a condition. So for example, if let's say we take we are shopping, right? We are shopping online, and then when we want to check out, we saw that okay, we added the wrong one product that we didn't want to buy, and then we now press cancel. So we want to remove that product from our cart. What happens that the cart is a list of items you are shopping, right? Your cart is a list of items you want to buy. So when you press remove item on one of your cart items, we'll not take that item. Maybe the item has a name, right? Let's say it is milk. Let's say in our in our array, in our cart rather, we have sugar, Milo, and milk. And remember, oh, we have milk at home, so let's not buy milk yet. So you now press remove item. You now click on milk and say remove item. We'll now enter our array. We'll now start using a filter method. We'll now say we want to filter through all of our cart items, right? And then take each item and then check, is the name of the item milk? If the name of the item is not milk, return the name. But if you can see that there's no else here, mean that if this name is Israel, we won't do anything with it. We'll just go to the next name. So we'll ignore it, right? So we say that if the name of the item is not milk, then return it. So when we are checking through the list, we'll meet Milo first, right? We'll check is the name of this item milk? It's not milk, it's Milo. We'll return Milo. We'll go to sugar. Is the name of this item milk? It is not milk, it is sugar. Then we'll now go to milk. We'll now check is the name of the item milk? It is milk. So we'll not do anything, right? Because you can see there's no else here to do anything with the name. You understand? So that is how this works. It's how it worked as well for this function. We are saying that we want to return all the names that are not Israel. You understand? That are not Israel. So we went. So this one is all the first one, right? So let me even use joy. Let me use joy. So sorry. Okay, joy is small letter, not big letter. That's why. Joy is small letter, not big letter. Let me go to my code again and refresh. So we check first. What this code does is that it went through all of the lists one after the other. In fact, first, let me see before I even I will say console.log checking checking for name, right? So if it's not, I will say else was removed from the list. So let's see which one is removed. All right, let's see this now. This will give us a clearer picture of everything. So you can see this checking. So we're checking for joy, right? We're checking for joy. So let's see how it progressed. So checking for Israel, we finished that. Checking for blessing, we finished that. Checking for peace, we finished that. Checking for joy, we finished that. Then we finished checking for joy. We now say that joy was removed from the attendance list, and then we check for happiness for the last time, right? You can see how this works, right? So this filter is calling this function and passing all of the items in the function one in the array, one after the other. This filter is calling this function we write. You understand? And it is passing each of the items in the attendance to the function as name, and it is passing them one after the other. All right. So this is where we'll stop for array methods. This is where there are other array methods, but you can start to go and look at those in your own time, right? That is it's very important to do this because we can't cover everything. We can't cover everything on this our calls. Now, let us quickly move to let us quickly move um to DOM operations, right? So what is DOM? DOM is how JavaScript interacts with HTML and CSS. Now, the meaning of DOM is document object model. The meaning of DOM is document object model. So what I would do is I'll create a new file called bio.html. Sorry, dot .js, right? Then I'll come to bio, then I'll post this our center of array. So let's see bio now. Bio.js. Now, what this does, like I said earlier, is that so what DOM means rather is document object model, and DOM is how JavaScript interacts with HTML and CSS, right? It represents a page as a tree of nodes. I'll show you what that means. Right? So let me say all right, I'll say const body equals document, or let me say let me just log documents. I'll use there. So this is another way of logging something to the console. If it is an object, you can use console.dir. Documents. Now let us see what like I said, The meaning of DOM is document object model. Now let us see what document is. So document, if I open it, you can see the document is our bio.html, right? Bio.html is the document itself. So you can see the URL. URL is the location of our file. So you can see users, CVS document project. You can see everything. So if I move to the left, you can see FSM bio.html. You can see this is linked to this particular file. So this document is the actual HTML file we're looking at. So you can see that you can see all under all, we have all of the nodes inside. You can see HTML, head, title, link, scripts. Let me go to your code so you can see them. Look at this HTML, head, title, link, scripts. Everything we have on the file is being logged here. You can see HTML, head, link, scripts, body, which is our body. You can see div.introduction. Remember, if you remember our class, our lecture on classes, dot is how we signify a class. So it says div.introduction under body, right? It is under body. So look at this now. Let's go our code again. Look at body. The first div, what's the class? Introduction. So you can see how we're able to capture everything in our file under this document, right? Under this document, right? So now we can also do other things as well, like select a particular div. Now, if I want to select this now, if I want to select this div now, this div with the class of introduction, let us do that and see. All right, so if I go to bio.js, I will say const introduction is equal to document dot query selector. So I'll call it like a class. I'll say dot introduction. What this will do is that it will go through our file, the file where this bio is mounted on, and it is mounted on the bio.html, and it will search through and get the elements where the class is introduction. So now what I will do is that I will console, let me console.dir. I'll use log, I'll use console.dir. It means directory, right? So I want to see this file and everything inside. Introduction. Let us see what we have now. I'll refresh. It says null. So let me look at this again. The introduction, document.query selector, introduction, HTML. That's okay. So let me use another method. Let me say get elements by class name. I use introduction. Let me check that I spelled it correctly. I did. So let me see what we have now. We have an HTML collection, right? So we can see we have introduction here, div.introduction. And introduction, what do we have inside introduction? We have an H1 and a P tag. H1 and P tag. You can see that H1 and P tag. So on the let's inspect it and see if it's the same thing. So if I scroll down to child node, right? Children rather. You can see we have an H1 and P tag. You can see them H1 and P. That is exactly what is inside H1 and P. Right, let's see if we can find the content. So I'll open the H1 first. I'll scroll down. Let's see. Child node text. Child node text. You can see the inner text. The inner text is Eduveri Israel. Right? The inner text is Eduveri Israel. Understand? So now with this, we have our right. So what this does is that we have successfully selected this div. We have successfully selected this div. Understand? So query selector, it grabs the, let me see. So if I say div, right, it's one grab every div there. Let me check this. It still says no. So by tag name, okay, elements by tag name, div, let us see what this one looks like. So we have two of them, like introduction and hobbies. So, and if we check our bio page, we see that we have, this is the first div, introduction, and the second div, hobbies. And that's all the divs we have here. You understand? So now we can also select elements by ID. So if I say ID, I save this to name, and then for P tag, I'll say ID, I'll save this to about, right? About. I can come here and select those two things using class name. So I can say const name equals to document. My document is the footing. So it has different methods. I can get elements by class name, no, by ID rather, by ID, and then I'll say name. Understand? And then name we also get about as well. I'll say const about equals to get element by ID. About. All right. What I'll do now is that I will, where is that JS? Bio.js, app.js. Is this an app.js? So let me go up here. You see biography. I have to copy this biography. Right, let me copy this biography. Bio.js. So I'll have it at the top here. Now we have our name and about. This name, right? What it does is that it grabs. Let me delete bio.js and app.js. What this name does is that this name, it grabs this H1 by ID. As you can see here, we're using document.getElement by ID. Get element by ID, and we're grabbing the name and the about, right? So now if you remember what we're looking through, let me show you. So let me console.log. I'll use dir name, right? So if I go back to my code and I refresh, it says null. Why is it saying null? Why am I getting null? Let me check this one more time. Bio.js, bio.js, everything is here. Okay. So what I will do is that instead of load this JavaScript, I'll move it to the end so that it loads the body before JavaScript loads. All right. So I'm going to let's see how this goes now. So we don't have our H1 as name. Let me go back and undo what I did just now and see. So what was happening was that the script tag, it was above the body. So when our browser is reading the script, when it loads JavaScript, right, all of the code will be loaded. And by that time it is loading, we have not defined this H1 yet. These two are not loaded before the script loads. So if the script loads first, it's only carry what has been loaded already at the top. So when I brought this below the body, you can see how we now have our H1 there. You understand? So remember, in your JavaScript, try to put it below the body tag so that especially if you're working with DOM operations, so that it will load everything above the body as well. Okay, so if I open this name, it's an H1 with H1 hash name. Hash is how we select an ID. So it is an H1 with an ID of name, is what they're telling us. If we scroll down to inner text, if we scroll down to inner text, you can see inner text, it says Eduveri Israel, right? We can change that value. So I can say, I'll change it to let because I want to change it now. I'll say let because if we use const, we can't change it. Sorry, I changed wrong. Let's let. So I'll say I want name dot inner HTML, right? Inner text. That's the variable. I want the inner text to be equal to. Let me say my name is Israel. Israel, right? My name is Israel. So I grab the name. I change the inner text inside to. So previously, what is there is you can say we had of name Eduveri Israel. But now I want to say my name is Israel. So I'll come here. When I refresh the page, what do you see? That's changed. It now says my name is Israel. So let me close the terminal. Now says my name is Israel, no longer Eduveri Israel. So although on HTML we wrote Eduveri Israel, with JavaScript now we have changed this to my name is Israel. You understand? So this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Now, what we want to do now is I want to replace this name. Want to replace this hard code. So what I'll do is that I will delete. I'll make this H1 empty. I'll make this p tag empty as well by default. All right. Let us use JavaScript to put the values inside. So we have our biography. We have everything here. We have everything about ourselves here, right? So what I'll do now, I'll say that the inner text for my name will be biography dot introduction dot name, right? And then about dot HTML should be biography dot introduction dot about me. All right. So with this now, we will change. We will now you can see by default. In fact, let me comment this out first. So you can see what it looks like right now. By default, there's nothing there right now because it's just empty H1, nothing inside. So once I've added this code, and I come here and I refresh, you can see it now says Eduveri Israel. I am a web developer. So with JavaScript, we've added text. With JavaScript, we've added text to our HTML, right? Now we can keep going with this. We can keep going with this. Now this is my hobbies. Now look at this one. We have our hobbies here. Where's our hobbies? Our hobbies is an array of strings, right? And strings are the same thing as all of this here. So what we can do is that we can open this, we can put, we can insert all of this with JavaScript as well. So what I'll do is that I'll come here, I'll say the ID is hobbies, right? Let me close this tag. I have a tag already. So the ID is hobbies, and then I'll come here and let's grab hobbies together. So we'll say let's hobbies. If we're using classes now, classes can return multiple things at once. Right, so let's hobbies equal to document dot. So if we're using ID, we can say get element by ID. If it's a class name, we can say get element by class name, right? We can get it by tag name as well, right? And we can also use query selector. Query selector, and then we'll call it like call it in CSS. We use the hash, right? So let us do this and let us just console.log. Sorry. hobbies. So let us see if we have the right variable. So I'll refresh this. So we have it here. You can see we have hobbies here, and we have all of them here like this. All of the A1s, all of the list items inside of the ordered lists. You understand? Now let us replace these hobbies with our what we have with JavaScript. I want to use JavaScript to replace all of this, right? I want to use JavaScript to replace all of this. Now, if you look at this one is not just text, it is the whole list that we need to add there. So I will remove this. I will remove this. Right now we have to, because it's an array, so we have to look through it. As a matter of fact, not even look through it. Let's think of this like engineers, right? So I have an array of hobbies here. I want to turn this array of hobbies into an array of list items with the hobbies inside of them. So I want to modify the array. So when I'm done with an operation, or when I'm done with the operation, instead of an array of just strings, I want an array of list items that I can now put inside my on another list, right? So how I will do this is that I will take so I will take this first and I'll map to it. So I will come here and say so I'll use let me use let hobbies list equal to my biography dot hobbies dot map, right? I'm doing dot map. So I want to receive a function that receives hobby, right? And then in that function, I want to return a string. A lot of what I can just write this. Can I write this as let me see A1. And inside of it, I want to return hobby. All right, hobby. So let me console.log hobbies list and see what it looks like. All right, let's log hobbies. Now you can see how we use curly braces, right? So if you want to write JavaScript inside of HTML tag like this, we have to use these curly braces. And this can only be done inside a JavaScript file. So .js file, we have tag want to add JavaScript inside, or want to write a JavaScript variable inside, right? We use this curly braces to wrap it. So let me go to our code and refresh, and then open the console. Sorry. So unexpected token less than. All right, that's fine. So I will wrap this in what is called string literals. Now, template on your keyboard, under your escape button on the top left of your keyboard, you will see this. You see this. You see this button, a button with this at the top of it, and then below that button, there's this. Sorry. So this is like quotation marks as well, but it's a special kind. It's called string literals. We can use that and add JavaScript inside HTML. I'll show you how. Or add JavaScript inside a text. So I'll take all of it first and I'll wrap it in that string. And then since this one is JavaScript, I can come here and if I put the hash symbol, you can see this. So this is normally a string. It will turn everything here into a string. Right? It will turn everything here into a string. It will turn everything here into a string. And then it will put hobby inside of it. Right? That's what you do. So this is a string, and then we'll put the $sign and curly brackets. Right? And inside here, you can now accept HTML. So I can put hobby here like this. Now let us see what it looks like if we see have this error. As you can see now, it is now let me log what I'll do. I will log the introduction hobbies first. So I'll say biography dot hobbies, right? Sorry. So let us look at two of them. So we transform this first array of strings into a new array of strings, but it's now wrapped with list items, right? It is now wrapped with list items. So now let us put all of this inside this hobby, inside that hobbies div. So we have our hobbies div here. We've grabbed it with the ID. Now, how do we put all of this? Now we can use for each, we can take each of them, and for each of them, we want to put it inside. I want to put the hobbies inside. Now, this is not just string anymore. So it's not just inner text. We can use inner HTML. I let us see how that works. You can see hobbies, right? Dot. Let's try inner text first and see how it works. Hobbies dot. No, I'll say for each first. Sorry, I'll say um, biography dot hobbies dot for each hobby. What I want to do, I want to say hobbies dot inner text, right? Dot inner text. So I want to add it to what was there before, right? I want to add the hobby to what was already inside the text before. Because if I say hobby dot inner text um equal to hobby, what happens is that it will take the first hobby and replace it. It will set the first hobby to inner text, and then the second hobby, instead of it to add it to what was there before, it will use to replace the old one there. Right. So let's see how this works first. Even so, you can see we just have learning there. We just have learning there, and that's because it took coding first. It took coding first. After coding, it now it now changes to plain dot happen to not change to learning. So we need to say plus equal to make it work. Plus equal to hobby. And then when we refresh, we now see everything is just inside there like a text. This is what inner text does. But we don't want inner text. Let us see. Let's make it work like a normal. You can see how it doesn't look the same, right? It doesn't look the same as what we have before. So let's try and correct that step by step. So first of all, I will change this to inner HTML, right? Inner HTML, and then I'll come in here to the code and see what it looks like now. It didn't even work. I didn't even add this now. And that why would it do that? It didn't add it because um this is not an HTML. This is a string, not an HTML. Although it has HTML tags, it still behaves like a string. Right. So now let us create HTML elements in JavaScript. Let us create HTML elements in JavaScript. So now how we do this is that inside of here, instead of just creating a list of string, right? We'll create an element, we'll create a list item element, and then we'll add this string inside. So that in this place, we no longer become a list of string, it will become a list of JavaScript elements. So for this dot map, before we return anything, we first of all say const, right? List item is equal to document dot create elements, and then we'll use this brackets and we specify what kind of element of the calculator. We will now say L. You can see how it gives us all the options: label, legend, li, link, listing. Link is for okay, link. So if I say A, for example, I say we have A tag. If I say D, you see we have div here. So everything is here. So I can say li because that is what our list item is, li. And then I will return. So I'll not say li or list item dot inner text equal to hobby. So now this list item we created, I want to set the inner text inside to hobby. And then let us, instead of returning this, we now return list item. We'll return list item, right? So now let us see what, let's log this hobby list. So let's see what it looks like now. So what I'll do is I'll comment out this code here. So we have hobbies list here already. Let us see what it looks like. I'll refresh this. You can see now, previously it was just a list of string, and then here as well was also a list of strings with li in front of it and behind it. But now we now have an actual list tag. An actual list tag, not just a string that says li in front and li in back. We now have an X, we now have a what's it called? An actual list tag, right? And if you scroll down to the inner text, where's inner text? Inner text, I see inner text is coding for the first one. And then the second one, the inner text, what does it say? Let's see. Fast I, inner text is plain dumb. So this should work now. So now let me close the console and uncomment this code. So this code, it takes the hobbies list. No, let me see. Hobbies, HTML. So we don't want to loop through the, what's it called? We want to loop through the biography hobbies. We want to loop through the hobbies list. Right? Loop through hobbies list. So for each of them, we want to add that new thing inside of the inner HTML. Right? So I want to add all of those li tags inside. And let us see how this comes out. I refresh my page. So we still didn't get our hobbies. We still do not have our hobbies here. Right? We do not have our hobbies here. So let us see what other method we can use to achieve this hobbies ID with HTML. So let me use this equal to and see how it comes out. Nothing. See this list hobby. So what's hobbies list? Hobbies list is a list of list items. So let me see if we have any other methods. So let us use insert HTML. Hobby. We have a lot of methods to work with, but let me see how this one works. So we have hobbies list and everything here. I'll go back and I will refresh, and we still not have our hobbies here. Let me open our console to be sure that we have our hobby.innerHTML is not a function. Sorry, I'm going to say insert. Okay, let me see. Have an insert function. So it's not here. It's not here. Let me see. Inner HTML also hobby. But for each a hobbies list. Now, what does for each does? For each runs this code for each of them. So before we can even use the loop, let us test first if we can insert one of these items here inside of our hobbies, right? So let me say hobbies dot now HTML go to hobbies list. The first one, right? The first one, I'll come here and I'll refresh the page. So it is there, but it's not reflecting like what we wish for it to reflect as. It's not reflecting how we wish for it to reflect. Let me check what the code looks like. These tags. Okay, so all right, so okay, we'll make this work now. So we have a method called append child. So if I remove, let's say, let me remove this, right? So dot append child, right? I say hobbies list. Oh, right. Let me see what this does. It's not a function, not a function. Let me log our hobbies again to be sure we are grabbing the right element. Okay, not hobbies list, rather hobbies. So that was my mistake. Let me see again. Yes, we have the solution now. Adventure.promises. Now this should work. Let me open our code, refresh. So we now have our list item with the number. So when you see this number here, you know that it is working as it should because it's now registering as a list item. So I can go back here, remove this. Now I can say hobbies dot append child. Okay. So this will take each of the items in the hobbies list and it will append it as a child into hobbies. So when I come back here and I refresh my page, and I have all of my hobbies here being inserted from JavaScript. Remember, our HTML code do not have any of this, right? They are coming from the what's it called? They are coming from JavaScript directly. Now I can also add the source of my picture from JavaScript as well. So I can remove this source here and say ID is equal to my picture. My picture. I'll copy this and I'll come above here and say let's picture equal to get element by my picture. Okay. So I can come below all of this and say my picture is now an image element. So it has the variable called source, right? As all images have attributes. So attributes in HTML, they are expressed in JavaScript as variables in an object, right? As key value pairs in an object. So we can say source equal to my biography dot picture. So the picture here, as you can see, is this is.png, which is also here as well. So if I comment this code out, I comment out the code and I refresh the page, you see the picture is gone. right? But if I add the code back, so it is back here. Why is not loading? Sorry, I'm coming. So it is JPG, not PNG. So come and add JPG. This is the correct one for the image. And I'll refresh, and you can see our image is back on. Right, our image is back on. So this is how you um add elements to Java to HTML using JavaScript. Now, optionally, I can add a button that says hello, right? So I can come here, I'll add a button under introduction. I'll add a button. I'll call it greetings. Call it greetings. I'll give it an ID of greeting. Okay. So if I come to my code, I will pull this greeting. So greeting button will grab by ID of greeting. So when a user click on this greeting, I want them to see an alert that says hi from Israel, right? So now how do we grab that interaction? When a user click, how do we grab the interaction? Now those are called event listeners. There is there is um there is a concept called event listeners in JavaScript. And what it does is that it listens for events. So when a user does something on the website, it's an event. So we can write event listeners to listen to different things. So it could be a click, it could be a scroll, it could be left click or right click, right? It could be a button press, like a button press of K or a button press of B or A or C or anything, right? There are so many interactions that we can listen to. But let's listen to a click of this particular greetings button. So I will say um, greetings button dot add event listener. I want to add an event listener. So every time uh, this event happens, I want this to happen, right? So I'll first of all add the event that I want to listen for, and I want to listen for a click. I want to listen for a click. That's click. And then I have to add the function that I want to run every time a user clicks. Right? Let's add the function. I want to alert hello, right? Hello from. Now this is JavaScript, right? I won't just type Israel here. I will say my biography, sorry, my biography dot introduction dot name. Right? So I want to send an alert that says hello every time a user clicks on the button. So if I go back now, so remember, look at how it works. This is how we add event listener, right? This is how we add event listener to our code. So when um so when the user clicks on this node, so this is an HTML node, right, or an HTML tag or an item in HTML. So we grab this using the ID, and then every time a user, so this add event listener, right? It's what it's saying that every time any user clicks on this item, run this function. That's what it's doing, right? Every time a user clicks on this item, that will add the event listener to run this function. So now what happens is that this button, let me refresh the page. You can see greetings. This button now have an event listener. So JavaScript is watching the button. Every time we click on it, that event will fire up. So let's click on it and see. You can see it says hello from. Now the name is not showing. Our name is not showing here. And let us see why our name is not showing. So This is an alert. Alert does not take commas, it only takes one thing. So we have to turn this into a string literal using that method I showed you earlier. Where is it? Okay, I removed it because we changed our implementation, but I'll write again so you can see it. So we'll use a string literal instead. So first of all, I'll use that. Sorry. First of all, I'll use that position mark. You can see it. It is a it is a slide, or it's a slant quotation mark. Right? It's not like the normal one that is straight like this. This is a straight one, but this one is slanted, right? So it is, like I said again, it is below your escape. On the top left, if you see ESC, that's escape. Below escape on keyboard, you see um, this symbol. So you can say hello from, then I can put the dollar sign, and I'll have this inside of there. So hello from the value at my biography.introduction.name, which, as you can see here, is my name, very Israel. So let us test this again and see how it works. Let me refresh the page. So it now says hello from Eduveri Israel. This is the beauty of JavaScript. Right now, you can see how with JavaScript we are putting values in our we're putting values in our we're putting we're inserting elements into our code, and we're also using click events. We're adding events to our items. Now, our website is not just a website that just shows data anymore, right? It's not just a website that shows data anymore. It's now a website that also listens for click events. Also listens for click events. All right. So uh, let us move forward. Let us move forward. Right now, let us see that every time. Now, when a user clicks on this, right? When a user clicks on this, what else can we do here on our website? What else can we do else on our website? Let us see. Now, let us say every time a user, what can we do? Let me see. There's not much that we can do from this. Not much we can do from this. So we've actually gone through a lot. We've gone through a lot today. Hopefully, you guys still, uh, you guys still remember what we did today. Although I'll share my code with you, but we are reaching the end of it. So after this program, we will now build a landing page. We'll build a full landing page, right? As a matter of fact, I will send the design in. I will send in the design. I'll send in the design. So before Friday, so before then, you guys can go through this code. I'll share with you. You can edit it. You can do with what you can do different things with it, right? Just to get familiar with all of the things we've talked about today. And then on the final class, which is on next week Monday, we'll build a functioning website and deploy it live for everyone to see. All right, that will be the last class of this program. All right. So now let us go over some of the things we've talked about today. Right, like this is a good time to go back. Because now on that last class, we'll just be using those things. I won't teach them anymore. I'll just be um showing how it works. All right. So are you guys still there? Can you still hear my voice? Do you have any question right now? Can you still see my screen? Because I see a couple messages that say they can't see my screen. How about now? Is my screen visible now? Are they still here? Okay. Anyways, let us just run through some of the recent topics we've discussed, right? Just to give you guys a refresher, and then I'll show you my code. You will study my code that we wrote today, and then next week Monday we'll build live here. You watch me build a landing page, right? You watch me do the landing page. So let us go at it together. So I'll start with app.js. Where is it? App.js. So we talked about variable types. So I didn't give notes on that. Where is it? So we discussed the different variable types. We talked about strings. Strings is any variable type that is wrapped with quotation marks, whether double quotation mark, single quote, or even this slant quote I just showed you guys today, right? So those are what strings are. We talk about numbers. Numbers are variables that allows for arithmetic operation. So they are just normal numbers, but they are not defined using quotation marks, right? So if you want to define a string, and say um, let number one go to one. This is a number, right? This is a number. I can say let number two goes to two. This is a string. So this first one here is a number. This one is a string, right? Because we wrap it in quotation mark. Right? We also talk about Boolean, right? Let is graduated go to true. Right? So this is a Boolean value. It is a true or false value. So if this, so we use this um, for different things. You can see how in our bio.js we have, but we don't have it here. So we have school. I can say is BSc. Okay, has I'll say has BSc. I have to mean that I have BSc, yes. I can say has MSc false, right? Is male, true because I am male. Right. So these are true or false values. So if I want to show this now, I can show, let's say, in my HTML, I can show um I can write a question that says i- um, do I have my BSc? And then I will check this value. I'll say if has BSc is true, I will now say he has a BSc. If it is false, he will say I do not have a BSc yet, right? So we can use this to run if and else operations, right? Because if and else operations always have a condition that resolves to true or false. All right. So these are variables. We want to talk about arrays today. Arrays are a list of variables, right? A variable that has a list of other variables inside of it. So attendance is an array, like an array of strings. So all of these here are strings, but they are different variables, right? They are all strings, but they are each in their own self a variable, right? So they are strings because they are wrapped in quotation mark, right? They are alphanumeric characters wrapped in quotation mark. That makes them strings, right? An array is like a container that houses many other variables inside of it. And associated with arrays have methods that we can use in modifying um, an array variable, right? Array of itself has methods like push. By default, every array has this method. So with push, like I said, with push, we add a variable or we add an item to the end of the array, right? With push, we add an item to the end of the array. So when we say attendance.push tvs, we are adding tvs to the back of the array. Understand? And then um, when we say pop removes whatever is at the end of the array. So when we say attendance.pop, we are removing what's at the end, which is happiness here. And then we are saving it to this name because the pop returns what was removed. So what dot pop does that it returns. So when we say attendance.pop, this now becomes a value or the last value. So it removes the last value and it holds it here. When we say const remove name equals to attendance.pop, we are saying that okay, this remove name should be set to the last value in the attendance after removing it with dot pop. So remove name will now tell us happiness, right? That is pop. Now on shift adds one item at the beginning of the array. So when we say attendance dot on shift Festus, we're adding Festus to the start of the array. All right. We're adding Festus to the start of the array. And that is what on shift does, much like push, which adds to the back. So, and then shift, as you can probably guess, it removes the element from the first or from the start of the array. So it removes the first element in the array. That is what shift does. All right. That is what shift does. So yesterday, we also talked about control flow. Yesterday, we discussed control flow. So if I scroll down here, so not yesterday, that's in there for today. So anyway, control flow is how we dynamically run different code, right? So if let's say we have a list of people who want to give gifts to, so we have a list of people to give gifts to. We have male gifts, we have female gifts, and we have a list of person objects, right? We have a list of person objects. So we want to give a gift to a person depending on their gender. We can use for each to loop through the list of persons. And when we grab a person, we can check their gender or is male. So we check when we grab a person from the for each. In fact, let me just create this example real quick. So I can say const persons is an array, right? An array of objects. Array of objects. So name is Israel. Sorry. So name is Israel. All right. Then I can say is male. True. Okay. And I can create another one and say her name is Bumi. Okay, Fumi. Perfect. Is male false. All right. So now I have male gifts. Right. I have male gifts. I have female gifts. So with control flow, I can try to give each of them different gifts. So I can say I can use for each, right? Because for each is the easiest way of looping to an array. I would say persons dot for each. Remember, all of these array methods, they receive a function, right? A function that is accepting a parameter that will be given to the function by the method. This is an array method. This for each will call this function, right? And it will pass the first time it will pass it this object the first time. Second time it passes this one. You know how this works. It's like a loop. So for each, I will say if person dot is male, if person dot mean that if they are male, because his male is only true for males, his male is false for females. Right? If person dot is male, all I want to do, I want to say console.log person dot name, right? Person dot name, I can use plus here. I can also use string literals again, just to make it more, just to make you get familiar with string literals. I can use string literals. I can say person. I can use this here. I can say I'll put the um dollar sign and call it bracket. I will say person dot name. I will not say is male. Is getting a man's gift. All right. Else, I will say person dot name is getting a woman's gift. All right. So this is how I will do this. Now you can see how we're looping through it with control flow. We can choose to run this code or to run this code based off of this condition if the person is male. So all of this will be now this condition, like I said, it results to true or false, and that's exactly what we need it to do. So this is app.js. App.js. Let me scroll down to see if we have any other code. I don't think anything else to run. All right. Okay. Everything is counted out. So I think it's in index.html. Yeah, I'll just quit. All right. So let me open the index.html page here. HTML page. All right. Let me go to the not revolved. Let me refresh this. All this error. Index.html53. So look at this. This is an error, right? It is in index.html.line 53. It is saying it is not resolved. So let me go and see what that is. 53. So it's saying that this. So this is the source, right? This is the source. So this source is online. So if my data is slow, it will not be able to load the page, and then we'll have that error. So for now, I can just comment it out because I don't really need it right now. So it is out, and as you can see here, we get a message: Israel is getting a man's gift, Fumi is getting a woman's gift, right? So we control the flow of logic using if, right? And that is what we've done here. That is what we have done here, right? This is control flow. All right. We also did this one with account balance and Netflix subscription, where we're checking if the user's account is greater than the amount for Netflix sub. And if it is, right, we log them the sufficient balance message, sufficient balance message that says you have enough money, and then we remove the money from the account, and then we show them the new balance. If not, we log them the message for insufficient balance, and it tells them that they don't have enough money, right? We also did the example with passwords as well, where we talk about how if we want to use POS or ATM, the ATM by itself will go and fetch our password because we put the card inside. It will go and fetch the card password, right? Once they have that, it will now compare it with the password or the PIN that we typed into the POS or the HTM or the ATM. Now, if it is the same, it goes ahead and runs the operation. If it is not, it gets a message that says incorrect PIN. You have three more chances, right? That is an example of control flow. All right. So we also, I think we talk about how with there are multiple options. Now in control flow, it's not just if and else, it's also else if. So if we have multiple flows, not just two, for example, where whenever a user pay, we want to check what they pay for, if it's a table of two or table of four or table of eight. All right. So now in this situation, we want to control the flow into different directions. So if the payment is equal to the money for table of two, we want to add a table, we want to add one more to the number for reserved tables on a table of two. And then we'll do the same thing for table of four and table of eight. And if we've checked all these three and the money is not equal to any of those, it means that they paid the wrong amount, and in which we tell them that, in which case, we give them a message that says you have paid for the wrong amount and you will be refunded shortly. All right, so this is a function. So now with this is control flow in its full flesh, right? We also talk about loops. We talk about for loops and while loops. For loops, we use a for loop when we know exactly how many times we want to run a loop, right? We know how many times we want to run a loop. So we use a for loop when we know the number of times we want to run our iteration. And we did that yesterday. And then I also said that we use a while loop if we're not sure how many times we want to run the loop, right? But we'll have a condition that we want to use to keep the loop active. Remember, I also said that that condition, the loop itself, must be affecting the condition so that it doesn't run into an infinite loop, right? So if we are checking for a number, if we're checking if a number is less than another number, the number we're checking that if is less must be increasing with every loop. If not, the loop will stay the same, right? So the loop itself must be changing the condition or must be affecting the condition so that at some point it will stop. If not, it will keep running forever and your system will hang at some point. I think we see that yesterday when I ran an infinite loop by mistake using a prompt where it kept pumping us to keep buying tables when we've already gotten the number of tables we wanted. Right. So it is important to be very, very watchful of the conditions we're writing for loops. All right. So handle booking. This is a function, all right? We talk about function. So functions, we define them using for the keyword function and then the name of the function, and then optionally, a variable. We can choose to use the variable. Some functions don't need variables, right? So we can do that as well. But some does, and then they accept a variable name, and then it runs this code every time we call the function like this, say hello, right? It runs the code inside of it. So that is how all of this works. Now, something I didn't mention is that function can return a value, right? It can return a value. So I can say um, function, not say hello, get hello message, get hello message. All right. So now this one, I want to get the message. It's not say hello was simply outputting the message with console.log. But this time I want to just get the message. So I can choose to say, I can say return. I want to return something, right? I can use our string letter here. Hello at name, comma, welcome to the restaurant. All right. So now this one simply returns it. It doesn't log it, oh, it returns it. So if I come here and I call get hello message, like so, I put Israel inside. You understand? When I open it, so this person code here, I'll log it out. Okay. So when I say I want to return this from the function, if I go to my code and I refresh, you won't see anything. Sorry, my uh Mr. Festus, are you there? Can you make me calls again? I think my internet went down a minute there. Let's round up. Okay. Screen two. So what I was saying was that to get this message now, I now have to say, to verify, I can say const message is now equal to calling this function and this, because this function now returns this value for me. All right. So then I can now console.log message. All right. So when I come to my code now and I refresh, you can now see the message now. So sometimes we want our functions to return a value. Instead of just performing an operation, we want to perform an operation and then return the value. Right. So keep that in mind. And if you have a return here, nothing else work under the function. Right. So you see this message here. So let us see if we log this here after return hello. As can see now here, once the keyword, anything you write below will not be run by the code, because our browser will assume that we are done with everything. So remember that if you return a value and you want any operation to perform after returning the value, kindly run the operation first before returning the value. Because once you return that value, once you use the return keyword from the value, nothing else will be displayed anymore. All right. So I will drop a design for the websites we'll build on the training group chat. All right. And then next week, Monday, just I will attend best you can. Next week, I'll live on the. All right. So thank you very much for your time, and we've come to the end of today's class. Over to you, Mr. Festus. Hello, Mr. Festus. You are muted.
Oh, sorry, sir. Do you need me to do something?
In agreement with such a person.
Yes, we are done with the class. I just wanted to hand over
Abraham
to
did
you.
his own part, and
Oh,
God
great.
Almighty move him forward. We surely
Okay, well done, sir.
upon us.
It is well.
The
Sorry,
Bible says,
I'm also
whatsoever we
handling
lay our
another
hands
meeting
upon shall
currently,
prosper.
so that's how to
It is
get
Alright.
when
out.
we do the will of
Yeah, so I'll
God
be
that
handling the
such
meeting.
Okay.